So we're here to kind of realize this, everybody's searching for that. What is happening? Why am I here? What's going on in my field? And the whole purpose is to the point of mastering the astral body. Because once we master the astral body, it is mastering the emotional, mental, etheric, and physical. 4 become 1.
How did you perceive those different levels of reality as you were traveling through them in your meditations?
So the inner work that we must do is because each chakra system has a mind of its own, has its own belief system in it. So the whole purpose is to first build this pillar of light, the Antakarana, or the tube of light that goes through all of them into oneness. From there, now we're operating into the different energy field. Now you start to operate into your emotional, mental body, which is the astral body.
What determines how evolved the species becomes?
Vibration. The frequency that we're under, right? But the vibration and frequency, that means that we're aware of our energy fields at all times.
Over the last few years, this podcast has been about one thing: exploring the deepest conversations on consciousness, transformation, and the unknown. But there's always been something missing. For months, my team and I have been working on something that finally fills that gap. This isn't the space where I'll dive deep on what it's about, but I'll be sharing everything very soon in a live session. If you've ever felt that you were meant for something bigger, this is it. It's happening very soon, and I want everyone to be part of this sacred moment. Hit the link in the description to sign up or scan the QR code on screen, and I'll see you all there. Much love. Igor Galibov, welcome on Just Tap In. What are you most excited about right now globally and in your life?
Globally, there's a lot of change taking place. I feel like it's a powerful space that we're in right now, Emilio. And internally, I think going through a lot of change as well. But globally, I really actually love the change that we're taking place with technology, and internally what's really happening energetically for each individual. I mean, we're having such a huge effect on awakening throughout the world in the past just 5 to 10 years compared to 15, 20 years. When you told somebody you meditate, they would say, do you have mental issues? Now, when you say you meditate, they're like, teach me. I want to know. So I feel like the consciousness is expanding rapidly, and beyond what's happening in the world, we see all these chaotic stuff taking place. It's just the way our consciousness has been programmed to change. It's been programmed to change through chaos. You know, we live on a planet that has a positive and a negative charge, or a North Pole and a South Pole. So there's always going to be duality, because we exist on her. So we operate with her, and we go from one extreme to another in order to find harmony. So it's like part of this whole change. But overall, I still feel like the people are really changing into harmonious relationship with themselves. And I think that's what we're really stepping into, which you can see such a big desire for that from people. It's like, really, how do I connect my heart, my mind? How do I find that coherence within myself? How do I find more peace and stillness in myself? And that's becoming so mainstream, which is great. You can see that in schools. You can see that even in militaries and police districts, that they're implementing this stuff, which is great. But personally, internally, oh man, there's always some big shift, especially when you're traveling a lot. You know how that is. Through these powerful spaces where there's powerful grids, you can't help it but to have these rapid changes that take place, and they shift your trajectory. They shift your visions. Like, okay, this is what I'm gonna be, this is what I'm gonna do, and all of a sudden it's like, boom, wait a minute, plans have changed. And what I learned the most is being flexible with time, being flexible with my vision and what my higher self has the vision for me. because that is where the truth is, and it teaches you how to disconnect and let go of the mental pictures that the ego mind or the little mind has created for itself. So that's where it's like, okay, that's powerful. And that's been like constantly, it's like, okay, I have this idea, this vision, this is what I'm going to be, this is what I'm going to do, where I'm going to go. And it's like, okay, you learned your lesson. You don't need to go here or do this. We're shifting. And I think that's like very important for me, is to change with change. Otherwise, we become old fast. I think that's one of the most powerful things. That's how we stay young, is because time is basically time is an illusion. We know that, right? But how do you stay with the time? And I think this is the only reason we become older and have resistance to things, is because we're not willing to change, have that rapid transformational moment that's really taking place in our own consciousness. Because consciousness does not stay still. It's in constant flow. So is energy. So if we flow with that energy, then we're always able to change our neurological pathways with that. So therefore, the energy that comes from the cosmos allows us to stay youthful. I think that's one of the things that, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And just by what you're saying, like I can feel into you're bringing some very advanced level teachings to humanity. But when I look at the core of what you're doing, and it's one of the courses that you teach is about mastering ourselves. And I just wanted to ask you there, what do you feel we're preparing for as a species in order to have to align our energy, master ourselves, understand more about sensuality, all the things that you're bringing through? What are we preparing for? Why are these teachings so relevant now?
What we're preparing for is unification of our own selves. So we have a physical body, but we also have energy bodies. That's why they're called energy bodies. And we're not aware of them, but they're there all the time. It's just our awareness hasn't been brought into that level from childhood. If we bring that awareness into that space, that is actually who we truly are. They say we only use 10% of our brain. Well, if we take a look at our energy field, it expands 50 feet in each direction. And we're only aware of like the silhouette, or maybe just a little bit of we've played with energy. So if we're aware only 10% of ourselves, that means we're utilizing 10% of our brain. But the energy body is what creates matter. So if we're the core, everything begins from that space and comes into matter. So as a collective, we are expanding into that space. We're becoming aware. We're starting to see dimensions, realities. We're not really quite understanding what's happening. We're having sparks of timelines, parallel realities, past lives, different lifetimes. Where are they all coming from? Where does that all take place? It is all in the field. But the field has its own energy bodies within it, and each energy body has its own rotational spin, which has its own vibrational cycle. And if we really tap into that space, then we can really become masters of our reality. Because our emotional state, our mental state, everything is not inside of us. This is just a processor of what's taking place in the ether. Our thoughts are not in our mind. Our thoughts are in the field. So when we go into meditative state, we find stillness or peacefulness. That's because we're clearing out that space. And that space to work becomes so effortless once you start to work and become more aware of it. So it's not expanding, it's not shifting the consciousness. The consciousness is always there. It's expanding your awareness into what already is, the consciousness. And when we become aware of that, that's when we become the masters of reality, because from that space, we can shift everything that takes place in matter. So for me, from my awakening, was the most important thing is, how do I close the gap between 5D and 3D? Because through my awakening, I just went into a deep state of meditation where I just spent 3-4 years just meditating. I did not care anything about physical reality at all. To the point I stopped eating, started not care about the physical part at all. Then one day I was like, wait a minute, but I'm here. how do I connect this gap? Because if I would just wanted to be up there, I would have been spirit and not reincarnate in this reality. So I had to kind of try to close the gap. So the courses that you spoke about was to close the gap between the 5D and the 3D, bring people into that space. And this is where the world is headed. Kids are being born and aware of that already, much stronger. And the school systems are not supporting them because they're not understanding what they're feeling, seeing, and perceiving into another dimension. So we're fully becoming activated. The earth is expanding, but yet the core of it is shrinking. So the expansion that takes place in our field, we have no other way but to go into that space. And that's why the energy bodies are very important, especially when we get to the causal body, because that is the cause of your existence. So we're here to kind of realize this, everybody's searching for that. What is happening? Why am I here? What's going on in my field? And the whole purpose is to the point of mastering the astral body. Because once we master the astral body, it is mastering the emotional, mental, etheric, and physical. 4 become 1. And then from there, now we're opening our space. I strongly feel and know that during the time when all the pyramids were activated on Earth, this is when we were able to operate in the astral plane. We were able to operate in the higher dimension because when we talk about spirit, angels, guides, they're all existing here. We just don't see them. But as soon as we meditate, we start feeling them. Oh wow, you feel that little tingling sensation that comes through, your body activates, you're right away in a happy state. You tapped into something that is always there. So what if we were always aware of these spaces and walking through life aware of them? What if the mind would surrender and to perceive from instead of the 2 eyes and from the 1 eye? How would we respond and react to reality? What would we do? Because we would always be guided in through that higher self, because that higher self would no longer be separate. It would become part of you. You just would utilize this to process that information.
You brought up your awakening, and I wanted to take a moment to go back to 2004. Your mom had gotten an illness, and you heard about a healer, an alternative healer in Brazil. You traveled alongside her, and along the way, you came just to be with her, but you said, I'm going to try this healer out for myself. What happened when you saw him?
At first, I was 24 years old. I was did not believe in none of that stuff. Now, this is 2004. There is nothing about spirituality on the internet, no angels, none of that stuff. It's like you believe in this physical reality. You give somebody $1, it makes the world go around, right? So when I came there, at first I thought I was going to leave her, like you said. And then it was just pulling. And when I came up to him, I had a spiritual surgery done, which I did not expect at all. After that spiritual surgery, I just started to feel and see things that I did not understand. I started to see and feel energy. I was able to move it, but I didn't even understand what I was doing. I was so aware and so sensitive to things. By the time I came home, it was the most chaotic time because I was feeling everything and everyone. I had all the powers, all the gifts, but no wisdom. During that time period, I spent about 3 to 4 years going into deeper meditations to understand what am I feeling, what I'm seeing, because I started to feel like people. Knee problems. Oh, bladder is full. I didn't know what the bladder was. I didn't know nothing about the anatomy. I finished with finance and that was it. I was did not expect this at all. So I open up books what is this? And I look inside and I'm like, oh my God, these are organs. And I started to feel them and I started to understand the relationship between the organs and the energy field. Then I started to understand that organs are not just there to process food. They're here to process emotions. That's the main source of them. But when we're in a dense reality from the physical aspect, it's for food only. But when we operate from the higher place, it's for emotional state of transformation. It's for emotional process. They're like a vehicle inside, like inside of a watch, right? You have all the little mechanism. You remove one and the now you cannot have the right time. Same thing with the organs. They're processing emotions and beliefs. I was like, whoa, this is different. So I didn't know what chakras were. When I came home, I opened up a book that my dad gave me when I was 16 years old. And I just threw it to the side because I was like, yeah, whatever. And it was the book of Mantak Chia, Multi-Orgasm Men. And I remember it had chakras in it. And when I opened it, it was like, all my chakras just became alive. I was like, what is this? And I just started flipping through the pages, just like downloading all that information and going into the meditations. So that's how I started to kind of download information and started to practice that. The other book was The Keys of Enoch by J.J. Hertak and Desiree Hertak, which was just kind of accidentally placed in my field. And when that was placed in my field, I just like was blown away. And as soon as like I opened that book, it just took me to a different dimension. I started to see these golden letters flowing in my face. And all I did was just having downloads. I didn't even understand what it was. So that book is so complex to read. I don't know if anybody can read it till this day because it was all basically information that was channeled to him or downloaded. So I started to kind of utilize those two techniques and to bring it into my own like existence. And that's when I started to understand what's really taking place in my reality and what I'm really doing. Because till then it was just like trial and error. I wanted to go out and drink like my friends. I wanted to go smoke cigarettes like my friends. Everybody was going out and I couldn't go out. I was like, I'm in pain. I come back home. I had to like go back in meditation and clear my energy out and everything. I was like, okay, so this is not part of the divine. I cannot do this anymore. Then again, it shifts. So again, it's constant change. And this took place for many, many years until 10 years later, I was like, I need to have friends that I can share this with because there was no one to share with. I was like, if I cannot have people that understand me on that level, then I will start teaching this. So I started to teach this because my friends asked me to teach. I didn't even know how to because I was constantly channeling information. You asked me a question, that's when I would see it and I would just relay the message. So throughout the time, I started to kind of go into these deep states of meditation and deep states of channeling for people in order to have an alignment for them with their higher self. So little by little, then I started to kind of teach. And later on, this has been basically teaching and free meditations every Tuesday. So every Tuesday for the past 10 years, I've been doing free meditations.
Consistency.
Yeah. I travel, then come back, and then again I start. So yeah.
Yeah. You said there, you've said before that you lost all interest in physical reality and you were spending most of your time in these etheric realms. Obviously, later in the conversation, we'll get into how we can, as you said before, merge the 5D with the 3D. But when you first started going into these etheric realms, you said that you were leaving your body every single night for 4 years. Where did you go? What were you seeing? What were you feeling?
So I would always exit out of my body, and then I would start to talk to my soul, spirit, and the guides that were there. And they would give me information and I would travel out in those different dimensions. So I heard of like, okay, let's go to a different planet. I would start to go out into a different planet and I would start to walk around that planet, see what's there. I would see different spaceships and I started to connect to them. As soon as I started to connect to them, I started to connect to the Pleiadians, which I did not know they were Pleiadians back then. They were just these blue silhouette, tall beings, Orion and Sirius and all these different places. But the Pleiadians is the ones who I really connected, and they started to teach me how to operate in the energy bodies. They started to teach me the chakra systems in the energy body. So we have the 7 here, but each energy body has its own chakra systems and how they communicate with each other and then back into the physical reality. That was my school. That was like my desire every night to go there and to learn this stuff. And that's when my passion began for that, because I started to understand that everything first happens in the field, then the physical body reacts and responds to it. So from that moment on, I wanted to know everything about the energy bodies, and I would come back and then write it down. So most of the time I would sleep for about an hour to 3 hours The rest of the time, I would be astral traveling. To the point where I started to tell my parents that I'm going to work. They would leave the house. I come back inside the house and lay down in meditation. And one day, I remember this, my dad walks in and I'm laying on the floor in my boxers in meditation. He's like, kicks me. He's like, what are you doing? He's like, you should be working. And I'm like 26 years old. I don't want to work. I don't want to do nothing. I'm just in the other realm dimension doing this stuff. And every day I would say, I'm going to work. They leave the house. I come back in and just do meditate. So after a certain period of time, that became so natural for me that I could not relate to people. Because the vibrationally you go up so high, it was very complex for me to be in the everyday reality with people. To go to the stores, malls, you would be so sensitive to everything. And I noticed my sensitivity was due because the physical mind would kick in and the physical mind would have judgment. It would have judgment towards those physical things. So there was a separation of my mind of spirituality is good, physical reality is not. And once I started to notice that I'm having judgment towards that, I started to merge that. So I started to remove judgments from my physical mind, saying, no, this is okay. Everything is playing a role the way it's supposed to be. As soon as I started to release the judgment part, there was no longer a feeling of negative energy in the field because my physical mind was accepting everything as it is. So every day I would get up and be like, okay, I need to go out a little bit now. Let's say I would go to Walmart. I was like, okay, this is a training camp. You walk in there and all these thoughts and emotions would start to bombard you. Like, okay, I need to come out. I come out, I'll like meditate, clear myself out, take 2-3 days, go back into it again. Again, see what my judgment is. Again, come back out, again, meditate for 2-3 days. And I would continuously do this till this day, until all judgments are gone and where I can walk completely through darkness and not be affected by it. Because the reason we're affected by it is because the physical mind starts to label and segregate things. And I was like, okay, I got it. And I continued to work with that. And through the process of teaching in the energy field, you start to understand that the energy has its own thought process. It has its own logic. It's a multidimensional thought process. It is multidimensional thought process of the physical mind does not align with the thought process of the higher mind. So it's like constantly rewriting your blueprint, your template, to perceive from the higher mind. And through those astral travels that I did, that's when I started to feel those much deeper and deeper into my body, because the astral plane has its own mental grid, has its own mental program. So from there, we transform the mind belief system, then the mind belief system of family and your surrounding culture. Then we have the mind grid of the earth. That is how everybody thinks. You know, everybody knows that it's a pen. Everybody knows it's a desk, a computer. Those are labels of the collective grid. But if we go into the mind grid of other solar systems, it's different. So the mandalas are rewritten completely differently there than they are here. So I started to wander into those spaces and see how they operate and how they think. That was a mind-blowing experience. There were these beings that would not even interact with our universe because the higher Palladian or the Syrian constellations were not even that high as they were. Because that's how clearly they thought, with so much purity, with so much love, that they did not have a word of separation or segregation. They did not have a word of possession. They did not have the words or meaning of those words in their field. There was no such a thing as war or mine, ownership, possession. It was just one unified consciousness. So from that experience, it took me to a very benevolent thought process where I was no longer seeing people for who they are. I was seeing people for their souls. And that could also become very dangerous in this reality if you become part of it. But if you're sitting by a tree by yourself, you can be in such a benevolent state because you don't have to interact, because we become blinded by the light and we don't see the truth sometimes of how this dimension operates as well. So that was one of the big lessons that I actually had, is divine discernment. That was one of the biggest lessons that I actually had, is to actually ground myself and see the soul, but yet also see people's intentions, because the person has their own intention as well as perceiving from the higher self, because the higher self perception is very benevolent and it's always of unification into oneness. So when we connect to other dimensions or other solar systems, we're connecting to their pure consciousness of the higher self. But if we meet in physical, they also have their own agenda. So that's why I said, wait a minute, if we do want to connect with the higher civilizations, that means we need to rise up to a higher state of vibration in order to connect with them. Because if we do connect with them now the way we are, we'll just find a new enemy instead of unifying ourselves with them.
Mm-hmm. A question there that came up is, when you were astral traveling into these different constellations and universes, were you acting as an observer, or were you actually interacting with these beings, with these civilizations, and picking up information from them?
Interacting. Like I mentioned before, I was interacting with them constantly. I wanted to learn. So there were times that they started to let me go and wander through their dimension of existences. And most of the time it would be, you can say, the councils that would say, okay, you're allowed to learn this, because in certain levels of existence, we either lived there or are being in that space where we have mastered a certain level of reality. So when we master a certain level of reality, from that level, we can send that energy, that wisdom down to other dimensions where we exist. So most of the time where you do connect to is you're connecting to a higher state of your own experiential design that was created by the oversoul. So the oversoul plays a big role. And the whole purpose of us here is to have that Christ consciousness. What does that mean? That means or Buddha consciousness. That means these beings have conquered and realized their astral body and their causal body. They're no longer living because of a certain cause they have to be here. They're existing now in and out at their own free will. So that's why they're able to choose a body to reincarnate into. So the whole purpose of us is to resurrection. Osiris, Isis story is also about resurrection. That's what we're here for, is to realize that. So if we can realize and come into that state of consciousness, that means you have merged all your energy bodies into one. So when we merge those energy bodies into one, you're no longer separate, because this is one body, another body, two body, three, four, keeps going. But if we merge them all, now we become a master of our full potential, who we truly are. And that is where we need to learn how to build this geometrical energetic structure in our field. The energy body needs to be built just like we build our physical body. We go to the gym, we work out, we build it, right? We play sports, it becomes better, we work on our mind. Same thing with that. Until you come to a certain level of space, then it just merges, because you're no longer bounded by the cause of existence. So that's feel like it's one of the most important parts in our lives here, is the higher we expand ourselves. One thing is to understand mentally. The other thing is to live it energetically.
Yeah, because when you said levels of reality, it got me thinking, how many other levels are there? Is this plane just one level that we need to master in order to get to? How did you perceive those different levels of reality as you were traveling through them in your meditations?
That's a very good question, because a lot of times we get intuitive messages, right? It's like, okay, for an example, I need to move to California, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, yeah, feels good. You sell your home, you take your money, you move to California, you had this vision, and 2 years later, you move back home. What happened? It didn't happen. It didn't work out what you saw. Because what happens is, if let's say your chakra systems, let's just put that way, are not fully aligned and receiving information from the higher self, you could get glimpses of a parallel reality that you're living. And that parallel reality needed to move to California. And because its emotional state was so heightened, you felt it here in this dimension, but it's not part of your timeline here. It's part of its parallel reality timeline. But you responded and acted according to what that other timeline needs. So you lost yourself in the other timeline, and therefore you're not in alignment here because your soul says, no, this timeline needs to experience something else. So the inner work that we must do is because each chakra system has a mind of its own, has its own belief system in it. So the whole purpose is to first build this pillar of light, the Antakarana, or the tube of light, that's that light that goes through all of them into oneness. From there, now we're operating into the different energy field. Now you start to operate into your emotional, mental body, which is the astral body. Once you conquer that space and you clear out at least 50, let's say, just I'm going to, in the physical terms, 50 to 52% of your karmic patterns there, now you're becoming more aware with clarity. Clarity is very important because you want to anchor that energy through you into this planet, into this timeline. And in the core of the earth here is the anchoring energy for all of us. So you have to be anchored here, as well as rise yourself up above the higher self into the higher chakra systems, or the 12 chakra systems that we call, which also include past timelines of vibrations, future timelines, present moment, and timelessness. And all these, once we merge them all, now we're like, okay, now I have clarity. What is for me? Is this for me or not? Or this is for a parallel reality that I'm seeing? And that clarity is also worked on because just like a child growing up has certain beliefs, and the way I think now and the way I used to think 5 years ago is different. And everybody else, it's always different. It changes. Because it changes because awareness is expanding. So there is that work that we constantly need to do and have a daily practice, which is the most important thing. And I feel like a lot of people are not willing to have a daily practice. That is the core root, because you're creating a certain sequence, energetic sequence within yourself that constantly comes back to this moment here. It's all about, right? We say the present moment. I'm going to be in the present moment. Are you really in the present moment, or are you thinking of something you're going to do after the present moment? So it's like that's the training camp that happens inside our mind and how the gland systems operate. So it's like such a beautiful existence, right? The physical body is one. And then we have the multidimensional energy bodies. That is even more complex because it's multidimensional. If our physical body is complex, doctors these days are still kind of figuring out, wow, how all this works. It's so magical and powerful. But the energy bodies are even more magical because now they're multidimensional, allows you to connect to other lifetimes and dimensions of where you are existing. The oversoul's experiences through all timelines.
What did you learn about the construct of this reality by giving yourself the opportunity to leave the construct in a way, going into that astral plane and seeing this space that we're in, time and space of third dimensional reality, the physical world that we see? What did you learn about that, and what its true purpose for the soul is for us being here?
It is to interact with all aspects of it. In order for us to change it, we have to dive into the darkness of it. What a lot of, to say in the spiritual community, has separated and segregated things. This job is not a spiritual job. This place is not a spiritual place, or this person is doing stuff not spiritual. He's eating not spiritually. Those are separative and segregative belief systems. We actually came here to dive into it, to change it from within. There is nothing that I find it that we should not force ourselves to change the way we eat. Is to accept what you eat. And when you raise your vibration, you will naturally have a pull towards the foods that you need to eat. It is not forcing. For instance, work-wise, a lot of people say, oh, this work is very heavy for me. It's not for me. I'm not doing it. Well, if you don't accept this job and you go to another job, it's going to repeat itself. And it's going to continue to repeating. Even if you do spiritual stuff, you'll still find resistance to it because it is not about the job. It is the perception that we have about it. So for me, it's like, I see the darkness, I invite it in. I see discomfort, I'll go deeper into it. Because if we are full potential of God, then we must experience everything in this life. Because God is everything. So if we're missing something out, then we're not full potential of God. That's what we came here to be, is to become gods. If we came here to become gods, then we must master ourselves in every situation and experience of this reality that it presents to us. Oh, my mother is this. Oh, my father is this. Wait a minute. Your mother and father is what you are. A compilation of both of them. Then those aspects we must go deeper into. And the whole mastery is when your mother and father become your students without you demanding it. It's when we become that so powerful that your parents will come to you and say, I want to learn. I want to learn what you're doing. How are you teaching? What is it that you're sharing here? Because now it liberates their soul and liberates your soul to connect to your own mother, father, God, because through them, we connect to the Holy Spirit. Mm. And all because we took all those aspects. And interesting enough, at many years, I wanted my father and my mother to understand what I'm doing. And they didn't. And I let it go completely. As soon as I let it go, they started to ask, what are you doing? I want to join your circles. I want to come to this. And they naturally come into that space. But if you work with your parents from the ether, that is when it becomes so much easier and effortless, because our parents know our flaws and they know who we are from the deep down. So they don't want to accept that because you're always going to be their child. But when you start to work with them from their soul level, from their higher self, that is a completely different perspective, because you're no longer interacting with the personality. You're interacting with the soul that was holding the space for you to recognize your own soul.
You mentioned up there that one of the reasons for us being here, or the main reason, is to experience life at its fullest, including the darkness. And one teacher that you learned this from was Saint Germain. And in one of his last lifetimes, he was a wealthy dude. And you said that when you learned that story, that, you know, we're not here just to experience one thing. We're here to experience it all. Your focus started to shift toward manifesting and creating abundance in the physical world. So what was that leap like for you, learning about Saint Germain's story? Maybe we can even bring up why that inspired that thought, but to going to living life to your fullest, which you're doing now.
Yeah, because I was broke like everybody else. I was $150,000 in credit card debt. I was flipping credit cards. All I wanted to do is meditation. And then all of a sudden, it was like, when I read that autobiography of Saint Germain, it was like, wait a minute, this guy had hospitals, schools. He was wealthy. He was healthy. He had money, and he was spiritual, and he was connected. I was like, I want it all. I want it all. If I'm going to live this life, I want it all. Why not? And then I try to say, okay, I want to start creating. And I sat in meditation for a couple of months, waiting. Actually, it was more than that. Manifesting on a piece of gold brick to fall on my lap. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. And Spirit came to me, and the guides came to me. It's like, action is manifestation. And then it hit me. Action is manifestation. But how do I make it the most effortless action? And the other thing was that I heard of this guru that's coming down to New York to do a lecture. And my intuition is like, go see him. I'm like, okay. I drive up there. I sit in the back and he's talking about the 7 chakras. I'm like, I'm not here for these 7 chakras. Like, I need more. What is he like? Where is the core depth of it? So I was like very patient. I decided at the end I will leave. I left through the back and we meet in the hallway. And this guru is like, up to my chest. And we just locked in eyes and we just like knew each other. And he looks at me, I look at him and he touches me here and he says, when you learn how to stop time, this is when you're going to be able to create. I'm like, stop time. I'm driving home. Like, stop time, stop time. What does that mean? I come home, I sit down, I start meditating. Like for 2 months, I'm like, stop time, stop time, stop time. I can't understand it. And then I just relax into it. And my mantra was stop time. And I came into the center point where time does not move. So when you, in your meditative state, when you come into stillness, everything around it is moving. But in the center, the core, everything is still. So if we move my hand really, really, really fast, you won't even see it that it's moving, but you'll just see the energy. So same thing, if we come into that state of stillness and anything consciously you bring into it explodes into time. That was it. I got it. And I started to manifest is basically sit in meditation, see what I wanted, find stillness, and then bring that into stillness. And from stillness, it will come into my reality. As you start acting upon it, things will start coming to you in your reality. I was like, okay. I started to continuously do this every day, meditate, visualize what I wanted to create a business. And within the first 2 years, the business grew so fast, so rapidly, I was not expecting it. It was a transportation company. And it grew up to 30 transportation vehicles. I was working, meditating, praying. That's it. Those are the 3 things and acting upon it. I started to pick up books on the physical reality that I needed to learn subjects and topics about the industry that I'm going into, learn as much as I can, and apply it into my meditative space. So the synchronicity between physical and spiritual started to come together because when you're an artist, first you visualize the canvas and then you start doing it. So energetically, I started to pave the way of what I wanted. And then physically, I started to act upon it without any expectation, and things just started to come on its own. And it just exploded. So that was I was 29 years old. By age of 31, success has exploded. That was it. And I didn't care about the money. I wanted to have the best service. Not focus on the money. You don't focus on that because whatever you focus on, the work that you're doing, you should be focusing on becoming the best at it. Because the money is a reward that comes with it, no matter what. But people focus on the money. Don't focus on that. That's a distraction. Because if you go into an industry that is big and wide and has unlimited potential, then the potential is what you make of it. And you focus on affecting as many people, as many lives as possible. That was my main thing, is like, okay, how do I affect people? How do I bring them into that? How do I create more jobs? Because I wanted people to become financially free. Yeah. And Saint Germain was a big, big, big catalyst in that. It was just like connecting to him. It was like, whoa, his blueprint was so vast, so powerful that I was like, I want this. And that was it. Just like download that quality.
What do you mean his blueprint?
Okay, so when we go into meditative state, right? Like right now, even if you go and feel your crown, right? If you even just feel the crown, can you see a geometrical shape above your crown?
Kind of like an orb.
like an orb.
A
Okay.
sphere.
So
Yeah.
that is your geometrical shape right now, right? But if you go to even higher and parallel reality where you are already successful or doing something, what is its geometrical shape there?
Should I do it right now?
Yeah.
Just expands. I feel like the shape would get more complex as you go to encapsulate.
And so let's say
more.
this is you at your 40 or 50 years old. How does that shape look now?
I'm not seeing it right now.
Higher. Mm. And it's done very gently with the heart space. There's no force in it at all. It is relaxing into what's already is. Now you see that one?
Yeah, I'm seeing like a yellow color.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now bring that down through your tube of light into this space.
It's like the temperature in my body is getting hotter.
Yeah. Right? And all the way down to the solar plex, down through the body. So that energy that you just experienced is the future self. So I would work with my parallel realities through that space or my past lives. And let's say they had the quality of becoming a successful businessman, or a quality of a successful father, or an open-hearted person. In one time or another, we have already achieved that space. We can align that with our higher self and bring those qualities down without any expectations. And as we start to act in this life, those qualities will come up naturally. So in the energy body, there's a blueprint, there's a connection of intersecting energy fields which operate multidimensionally. And when we operate from that gentleness of our heart, it will naturally come through when it's needed. I have 3 kids. Recently, my youngest one, she's 12. I've been working with her, connecting to her higher self and working with her higher self. She comes from school. She says, "Papa, I got an A." I was like, "Great, you studied?" She's like, "I didn't know all the answers. I asked my higher self and it gave me the answers." And I said, "Okay, great. Did you study?" "Yeah. He told me he'll give me the answers as long as I study." Her grades have improved just in 4 months of doing this work to completely 90s and above. My oldest one, I played with her when she was younger. And she was in second or third grade, if I remember, and taught her how to connect to her higher self to bring in answers, yes or no, or questions she has. She comes from school. "Papa, I got 100, throws her backpack all happy. I'm like, "Did you study?" She's like, "No." I'm like, "Wait a minute. That's not what quite I taught you, but fine." 4 times in a row, she comes back from school having A's. Like, she's happy. She doesn't have to study anymore. That's it. I was like, thinking,
she's
wow.
just guessing and getting all of them right.
She's asking her higher self.
Higher
putting
self.
all the answers in there. And I'm thinking, wow. this is very powerful. Like, she's a new generation of children. This is how they're supposed to be. They shouldn't use their brain for that. They should just have downloads of information and know everything that they need to know, because the universe knows it all. So on the fifth time she comes and she throws her backpack, upset. It didn't work. I said, what happened? I got a 48, less than 50. I said, well, okay, let's come down. Let's ask your higher self. And she tunes in and she's like, it wants me to develop my brain. I was like, well, see that, now you got your answer. So playing these games with kids, they become so intuitive with that the new reality changes. New reality that we live in will change. It takes 15 years to really change a generation. If kids in schools are taught this stuff, they become the next lawyers, presidents, CEOs. They're no longer going to be responding from the pocket. They'll be responding from the higher collective consciousness of what's needed for each individual. Instead of putting them to jail, they're going to say, I think that you need this type of rehab or support. They will, because we're working in a system of punishment instead of correction. And that's where I think is a big, big change will take place if we can really change the school systems. Because in the past 100 years, I mean, everything changed. Technology changed, everything changed. Our home structures, cars, everything, right? Except the school systems. And if we can change that, I think that's where the big change will take place in our world. I would really, really love to get into that side of education for kids, because that's how we're going to really change everything. One thing I saw, you mentioned Saint Germain, is like, if you want to help people, heal them. If you want to change the world, teach the children.
Yeah, that's a big mission with this podcast, is inspiring the next generations of leaders. And I had a very similar experience to your daughters of, like, in college, I was about to fail my first year. And, you know, the second semester, I was like, okay, I need to get my act together. I had been partying for 7-8 months nonstop. And I was like, okay, so I was studying like any normal person, but all I would do was, before I went into an exam, I dropped in for an hour and meditated, because I was already learning meditation. And I would go into the exam and just like the flow of how my brain was working, like I was getting 90s and above on every single exam. And it was just, I was like, this is a superpower. And I want to go back, because when you were 24 and you had this awakening, you said that it was like having all the powers but no wisdom. So I want to go a little bit deeper into that, of maybe what were some of those maybe mistakes or challenges that you made of by not having the wisdom and having all those powers. What did you learn from having all of this information, knowledge, and powers? What happens when you bring the wisdom into it?
You become a super connected to this timeline and start working with the goddesses of time and creation, because everything has a goddess. These 12 powerful goddesses, if you learn how to operate with them, the universe operates with you. Trial and error was a lot of it, because there was nobody for me to learn this from or to connect to. So it was trial and error. It was a lot of difficulty as well. And I cried at some nights wanting to like send me a teacher that I can understand this from, but it was all learning on my own. From that experience, it allowed me to really have and be able to connect and relate to other people and all their scenarios in life, because I went through my own experiences. You cannot teach a person or relay the information unless you really truly went through it yourself and embodied that wisdom. So I'm thankful for that, even though it was kind of complex during that time period. But now looking back at it, wow, that was truly mastery. Be careful what you ask for. I want to experience everything. So the universe gave me everything, you know? And I think that the question is what I learned from this and how I utilize it in my everyday reality is now by helping people come into their own space, finding their own heart space, finding their own center. And it also catalyzed me into my own true purpose in this reality is to teach about the light body activation. And I feel like if we get into our light body, we really tune in into that space, we have all the answers there. You know, it's important to have two types of meditations. One is stillness, and the other one is the active meditation, because there's an active meditation where we're doing something in the mind, and the other part is the stillness. If you learn those two aspects, now you have mastered the left and the right hemisphere of the brain. Now you're creator of your reality. Because a lot of times people either go into complete stillness and they come into their heart space, and it's very complex to exist in this reality if you're just in your heart. But it's so beautiful and soothing that there's nothing to do. And some of us came here to do something. So I had to go through both of those experiences to learn how to create as well as to find stillness. So we have to utilize the left and the right hemisphere, the divine feminine and masculine within. And that's very important, I think, to understand, because people go either one direction or the other direction. They either have a busy mind or they have complete stillness where they cannot interact in this reality. I think that's where my teachings come in. I really enjoy that, helping people to merge those two, to really find a balance in that. Mm-hmm. And I think I also been very blessed in this lifetime with these gifts of seeing and perceiving energy and being able to manipulate it according to the higher self. I think that was a big blessing, because I've done a lot of good things probably in other lifetimes that this information comes through. You know, it's like we have so much stuff to share on the physical, but the soul also has so much stuff to share, because it accumulates all these different gifts, and we really dive into those, we can really download those aspects of ourselves here. That's where you asked, where do you think we're headed? We're heading into a multidimensional experience of existence. No separation of physical or spiritual. It is the oneness between the two realms. It is a merger where we are the gods, goddesses existing on this plane. And we must understand the physiological experience, how it operates from the core, as well as the spiritual aspect, in order to unite them. Because the physical mind has its own story, but the soul has its own perception. So once we merge that, the mind surrenders, and we understand the mechanism behind both of those worlds. That's when we get to connect with the other dimensional beings as well. That's when the gateways will open up for us as humankind to connect to higher civilizations. And that's where we're going. That's where we're headed. It's like, it's inevitable. It's one of those things that has to happen. We were there. I mean, if we take a look at our history, we were there. We're just going through a cycle to come back into that space. If we go back 12,000 years or 30,000, 60,000 years ago, we were open with the Anunnakis and extraterrestrials. And we go through Egypt, we go through the temples in Egypt and the Valley of the Kings. And we're just walking through those tunnels. You see what's there. You see the different dimensional beings that are written on the walls and talking about different portals and gateways and stargates. It's just, we've been isolated because we're at a lower frequency, so nobody wants to interact with us. You know, it's like they're waiting for us to grow up and mature a little bit. So we have to work with these energies, and I think it's very important that the kids also step into that and be taught this information from school. From school, this is where the power lies. That's when we're going to see the liberation, not just in society, but on a cosmic level, connecting to the higher dimensional beings.
What determines how evolved a species becomes? Because if we've been at those higher states of consciousness before and dropped down to a lower level of consciousness, what determines how high we can go up in that consciousness scale to start interacting with these other beings and civilizations?
Vibration, the frequency that we're under, right? But the vibration and frequency, that means that we're aware of our energy fields at all times. We're aware of our energy bodies. That's why I focus on the energy bodies, because we separated ourselves from our own selves. Because the higher beings operate in those levels. They're not separate from that. We're utilizing technology right now based off hitting a button, but utilizing technology based off your energy field and mentally connecting to that. Let's just take a look. Let's say we become like advanced and we get into this spaceship, or we get into our spaceship, like, okay, spaceship, take me to Saturn. And the spaceship starts going to Saturn, but it's connected to your mental body and telepathically listens to you. So the spaceship goes into Saturn and you're like, did I turn off the stove? And the spaceship's going to turn around and fly back, but you didn't want to go back there. But it's connected to your belief systems, to your mind. So that means we have to be so clear mentally that we can choose what thoughts that we want to experience. But we're not at that level. So when we
what
get
about
to
emotions?
The emotions are created by the memory in the mind. So the emotion is the response of what the memory is. If there's no memory, there's no emotion to it. So the memory is in the field, right? So it's like we have a toroidal field, and inside of it, we have many other toroidal miniature fields, because they are the events that took place in our life. So when we go into like state of meditation, you might feel some energy around our head or this, that. These are all beliefs that are floating around, and the emotional body responds or reacts based off of that. So if we clear the mental body, and the emotional state will right away liberate itself. So because of that emotional state, that's where we actually, it's a measuring tool of heightened vibration that allows us to manifest. Sometimes you can tell somebody, I love you, and you feel it with a passion, right? And that is an emotional state that goes heightened. But if you speak from anger and you become afraid, that's also an emotional state that heightens itself. It doesn't know if it's good or bad. It's just a measuring system of expanding energy and magnetizing it into this reality. So if you scream really loud and from fear, it expands that emotion, and then the universe responds to it and gives you what you're expanding at. But if you expand from love, it's also expanding really heightened, and it attracts that energy. So the emotional state doesn't look as a good or bad. The emotional state is a projection of the mental body. So when we merge those two together, they just have two different rotational spins. One spins onto the left, the other one spins to the right at a different frequency. When we merge those two together, they start to work in harmony and synchronicity. When they merge together, now you're stepping into your astral body. So now you're operating from the astral realm instead of the mental or emotional realm, because now they became one. They're synchronized, like a Merkaba vehicle.
Yep.
And that's what it is. It's basically merging that together and becomes one whole field. It's no longer one rotates and the other one waits, or it's off balance a little bit.
Let's imagine a world where the children are raised with this information. You know, you're telling me off air that you raised your oldest daughter telepathic. What would need to shift in the world, or what actually would shift in the world if we were to raise these children in this way? And maybe utilizing your personal experience, because you've had 3 daughters that you've raised with the information that you're sharing with us, probably a lot deeper than what we're going into now. But
oh, much, yeah.
of course, how did that change how they're living their adulthood or their teenage years and going into what we would call real life,
Intuitively, much more intuitively. They have, see, one thing is I raised them, right? But then they also have society. So I kind of let them go and say, okay, go ahead. Your friends are out there. You have phones, this and that. So they merge. They like beautiful things as well. It's important to have both worlds. You cannot just have one. But now they have the tools to center themselves instantaneously. They know they're emotional, or they know they had a mental disappointment, but they have a tool to come back. It's no longer being upset for a week or 2 or months. It's days or hours, or even less, because now they're aware. They have a tool to bring themselves back into their center. And the more they do that, this is this generation. Their children are going to become even more in tune because their blueprint already has changed. So now their children is going to be picking up from that blueprint, and they are going to be communicating with their kids intuitively. It's just, for us, it seems like 50 years is a long time. But on a greater scale, 50 years is not a long time. So each one of us come in for a certain period of time to have a certain change in the world. So we're having an effect for the next 50 years or so in this collective society. Then the new stuff comes in, and another generation that will have effect based on what we have created so far. Because if we take a look at our grandparents or our parents, it's different completely than what we are living in. They didn't have these tools. We are so blessed that we have these tools. The awareness of it is so out there these days. I mean, this world is having everything. It's just a matter of taking it and start acting upon it. And I think the next kids generation, they'll even have more tools. And AI coming in, I think is going to free us from so many things. No longer have to go to 9 to 5. AI is going to take over those jobs. And if we don't have to do 9 to 5 anymore, and the AI is going to become the government sooner or later, and they take over, because now the governments are no longer making decisions based on their beliefs that was this country is bad or that's bad based off what happened 50, 60 years ago, but a collective consciousness. And if we don't have to do this 9 to 5, what would we do? Naturally, mankind is going to start searching for God, exploring the natural existence, just like the natives did. Becoming intimate with all aspects of ourselves, with nature, with trees, with animals, because we're free. We're no longer bounded by the 9 to 5 existence. I feel AI is going to take us to a new level. Of course, it has things that it will take away and some things it will bring. But overall, I think we're going to find a huge, huge transformation, especially in the next few years with AI. It's very, even for us, growing up with this, it's like, wow, this is crazy. This is amazing. Look what it's doing.
Yeah. It's fascinating. And you're mentioning in the beginning how when you enter these astral realms, it's a lot easier to tune into the timelines of things. And I'm wondering if in your latest explorations in the astral, if you've tuned into any timelines that show us where Earth could be, maybe, when your daughters are your age, and how that world would look like and how we would be living. I know you just gave a glimpse of those things, especially with technology and AI, and searching God within us. But what does that timeline look like?
Okay, there's a separation of things that takes place, of those that go towards the spiritual aspect and those that don't. But that will take place, and still 300 years from now, it will all merge in. But during this time period for the next 20 years, we will see AI take over a lot. And this is going to create a kind of like, for people that are always working and doing stuff, for them it's going to be questionable. It's going to take over a lot of things, artwork, this, the only thing is left for us is to kind of enjoy ourselves. Now, if that comes in, podcasting, let's enjoy ourselves, right? If that comes in, then that means people are not going to be working. If they're not working, then the financial system is going to change. That means everybody's going to be on government pay. That means everybody's going to have what they need to have. But are we ready for that big change? Are people ready for that? Because it's mind-boggling for them. That's okay. I'm going to be given money, and that means I don't have to work. But as a natural state, we have to explore. So what are we going to be doing with that time? What do we choose to? Where are we going to be able to push the system towards? And I believe the system will have to be pushed towards our own development of the spiritual concepts, connection with our higher self, connection with our monadic self, connection with our soul spirit. And I feel like that's where we need to really steer it. But I think we feed the information we feed AI with this kind of information of work that you're doing. It's very important, because the more we spread that wisdom, the better. It's still learning from us. Even though it's learning on its own now, it's still learning from us. And I think it will adapt to what we are sharing here.
Yeah, definitely. What do you feel determined that segment of humanity that went more toward the spiritual side and those that maybe didn't?
The separation that takes place.
Yeah.
Those that are living in their greed state of control, a state of constantly just doing like a robot, working, becoming successful, powerful. For what purpose? We don't take none of that stuff with us. We come naked, we're going to leave naked. We think we're hiding something. We're not hiding anything, because we're still oneness. And that's where the understanding of the mindset needs to come in. And I think until we change the school systems, we're going to see that separation. You can see in some countries, school systems have changed dramatically. They're changing their school systems according to the kids' needs. I really actually enjoyed seeing I don't know if you saw that, AI teaching students.
No.
Oh, man. So they did an experiment, and AI decided was going to be the teacher. So they put a classroom of kids with AI, and basically what kids go from school from 8 to 3 or 9 to 3, AI does it in 3 hours or less. And what it did, it gave a test to the kids. The kids took a test, and afterwards it saw how the kids learn and what they like to learn. So it asked the kids, what kind of shows you like to watch? And the kids say, Gilmore Girls, let's say, for instance. It understood the blueprint of Gilmore Girls, the show. Based on that show, it gave him problems and mathematical formulas to learn. And the kids aced it because it understood the blueprint of learning from that show. Wow. So it already understands how our mind operates according to the things that we like. So that's very powerful. And my kids
what's
are going
interesting
to college.
There is, right. I was just going to mention, because, here we have an AI doing that, but, you get a teacher that entrains with her students or his students, telepathically, and understands the template of how they learn, and they can just exchange that information through a different style of communication. That's one layer deeper than how we normally communicate.
That would be magical.
How did you teach your daughters telepathy?
I started to experiment with them. So I talked to their soul all the time before they were coming in. My oldest one, I literally created during the time of conception. And yeah, utilizing the techniques of Taoism and during sexual alchemy. I put together, I started during the lovemaking, I started to create and see the DNA aspects and qualities that I liked from their mother and my side of the family. So during that time period, as I started to put it together, creator, and formulate it right into the time of the orgasm at the same time. And when you create that and you send it out into the universe at the same time you have the orgasm, you're creating a vibration in the physical body, in the physical reality, to hold the space for the highest vibration of a soul to come through. Because souls come through based on the love expansion between the two people. And when that takes place and they feel it, the soul feels it. And at the same time, you create a blueprint mentally, right? Just like we went up and you saw the sphere and then there was another energy field behind it. You go into that deep meditative state, but with an orgasmic experience. And during that whole moment, a gateway, you're creating a portal. You're creating a own stargate. And the soul says, whoa, this is the highest vibration for me that I can experience my life through. And it will choose that vibration. Once it chooses that vibration, now it's like, okay, now I was completely communicating with the soul. And as a sheik would come through, I continued working with her from childhood. Like, okay, telepathically, I knew like she needed or she wanted food, or this is just intuitive aspect. And then talk to her on the soul level. As she started to grow, we started to play games. I would give her a shape and I would say, okay, change it into this, and she would change it. Go get me a fork. She would go get me a fork. Go get your socks. She would go get her socks. And I would play like this telepathically all the time and see how it is. But I would also channel that information into a certain part of her mind, which I knew that would be the receiver. So we'd go outside for a walk and she'd say, where do we go, left or right? I was like, well, let your intuition guide you. Be like, right. And we go to the right and she sees a bunny there and it gets all excited and happy. And that's the state. You can feel her whole emotional state expand. You know, the whole purpose is for us to be that happiness, in that joyful state. And that's how we started to play. And that's how I've been training them, is by doing these exercises here and there. And then we'd make energy balls, pass that around, change them into different colors, play with that. So there was different games that would come along. And usually, if you just allow your divine self or your higher self to guide you, it will give you the different creative aspects will flow through you.
It's a whole different style of parenting. And I feel like that is going to be the parenting that the generations that are coming in now will need the most, because of how open they will be energetically, and the veil is completely lifted. They remember themselves, who they were, where they're going, their purpose. It's going to be a very interesting next few years for sure.
Definitely. I feel so as well. It's already here. I mean, it's already here. It's just a matter of like implementing it into everyday reality. Yeah.
It's here. Igor, we end every show with a segment called The Final Trio, which are some questions that we ask at the end. But before that, I would love to give you the space to share with us where people can find you, where they can connect with your work, all of these teachings that are coming through you, and in general, just join themselves to what you're creating, what you're building.
Thank you. You can find me on alignmentoflight.com or igorgalibov.com. Obviously, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. They also have free meditations every Tuesday. So it's been going on for about 10 years now, for over 10 years. Also, there's a community, online community, but if you go to my website, you'll find all that information there. I also do different pilgrimages to different sites, different sacred sites in the world, where we go through activations and different timelines, experiences where we get to kind of step into that timeline and allow to improve ourselves in this reality. so we can become the full masters. Also have retreats, different retreats and workshops that will help you individually as a person to understand what spirituality is about, how to integrate all those fragments, how to find balance between the both realities and anchor it into this reality. Basically becoming the best version of humankind that we can be.
Just a quick question there. Why did you choose the word alignment rather than anything else you could have used, like maybe like healing or something else?
Exactly that, because when we think we're healing, we're not healing. We're becoming into an alignment of our own self. There's a light that travels through, and everything that we think we're manifesting or creating, we're just actually coming into alignment with our soul. If you're in alignment with your soul, everything else comes through. So you're aligned with your own element. In that alignment, healing takes place, manifestation takes place, creation takes place, all aspects that you desire. That's why it came through, alignment of light. Yeah.
Beautiful. We end every show, as I said, with the final trio. The first two questions are personalized to the guest, and the last one we ask at the end of every show. So the first one I had for you is, what is the one belief that humanity must completely let go of in order to evolve to our highest potential?
That they're really doing something. The belief system that everything is already is. In our meditative state or in our everyday reality, it's finding the isness. And we find that isness, you're already in the space of love. You're already in the space of peace. We're just not aware of it. Finding the isness. Yeah.
If awakening is a process of remembering, what's the most important thing that you've remembered so far in your journey?
Heart. Being in my heart space. That comes back, like, as the visions of the past, futures, they're all beautiful, but being in the heart space is the most powerful one.
How'd you remember that?
It just comes through. I don't know. It just comes through. Like, there's no stillness, there's no doing, there's no going, there's no being. It just is. And that's where I find myself. All the other things that we do, teachings, and I want to do this and that, that's still part of the personality that shares because it's here for something. But coming into the heart space, when the day is done, that's for me is, tranquility.
Because you teach a lot about the metaphysical aspect of organs, and the heart is an organ. And if we're talking about the heart space, what really is the metaphysical aspect of our heart, and why is it so important to know?
It is a space that connects to everything and nothing. It is a space that is everywhere and nowhere, but is the space of true essence. Even me explaining that, still giving it a label, but by feeling it and being in it, you can only truly understand it from there. There is no quite word that can explain it. It is just being. And when you bring people into that space, then they understand. But to verbalize something like that, we can do wonderful ways of expressing it, but it's still not it.
Yeah. Language is very limiting to explain something that needs to be lived.
Yeah. once a person finds it, they know what it is. Just like this, brother. Yes.
Yes. The last question we ask at the end of every show is, we call it the time capsule question. And it requires us to travel a little bit out into the future, which we already did in many ways throughout this conversation. But I picked out the timeframes of about 15 to 20 years down the line, because I believe it's going to be a time in history when the young generations of today are going to be fully stepping into their embodiment and into leadership positions around the world. And just like any great leader that has walked this earth, any ascended master that has walked this earth, they've had the support of amazing mentors, teachers, resources, and tools that allowed them to be the best leader that they could be. And you had the opportunity to leave behind a time capsule that these leaders would open down the line 15 to 20 years. And when they open your time capsule, you've equipped them with anything that you feel and believe will allow them to just propel into their highest timeline. It can be something physical, it can be something non-physical, but think of it as your legacy for humanity. What would you leave behind inside of the time capsule for the future generations to come?
Always coming back to the center of the higher self or the higher heart. They'll find everything there. I would actually leave it as a vibrational experience. When they open it, or they will feel it and know what it is. As a frequency or vibration, that's what I would leave it as. Not an object or anything. It would be something that they step into and be like, that's it. The inner knowing will come through. A space beyond space.
Yeah. A living field, a transmission.
Yeah. Exactly.
Which was this conversation. So we could just put the conversation in the time capsule and we're good.
I love that. Bro, I love it.
Igor, thank you so much, brother, for your infinite wisdom, for holding space for us to really go the deepest into your heart, into your teachings, into your experiences and stories that you have to share. It's been an honor to hold space for you, brother. I can't wait to meet you in person pretty soon, crossing my fingers, and continue these conversations for sure.
Definitely.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you for holding that beautiful space. And the work that you do is very powerful and meaningful to millions of people. I'm sure that you touch hearts upon, and continue shining your light, brother. Thank you so much.